This is Sanhedrin, Daf Ayin Gimel Amud Aleph. We did the Mishnah last time. Elu hein shematzilin otzan benafshon. These are the people who you can kill in order to prevent the crime that they're going to do, whether it's murder or rape. And we discussed the fact that there's an ambiguity in the Mishnah about who we're actually trying to save. Who we're matzilin. Are we trying to save the perpetrator, like Rashi says, min ha'avera, or are we trying to save the victim from being harmed? Ve'elu shematzilin osan miyad rudufeihem benafsham shal rodfim. That we're saving the victims, the potential victims, from their pursuers. And there's textual support to either interpretation, and we have analyzed the strengths and weaknesses of both. Rashi again says that we're saving the perpetrator from the Avera. The Yad Ramah quotes both interpretations, as does the Ran that we saw in the last year. Even though there's textual support to either side, if you take a step back, the much more intuitive interpretation would have to be that you're trying to save the victim. Rodef is self-defense, that if someone's being pursued, they can defend their life, or someone else can help them by killing the pursuer, the Rodef. It would seem that we're trying to protect the Nirdaf from being harmed much more than saving the Rodef, the pursuer, from sinning. Actually, that seems to be the whole point of the Mishnah, that the three crimes in the first half of the Mishnah, where you have a Rodef for Hariga, that's a murderer, someone who's pursuing Zachar to sodomize a man or to rape a married woman. In all these three cases, you kill the Rodef to protect the victim. In the second half of the Mishnah, Aval, in the second half of the Mishnah, the people who you can't kill is a Rodef Achar HaBehema, someone who's going to attacking an animal to have relations with the animal. Machalal as a Shabbos, someone who's going to pursue the sin of Chilul Shabbos and the sin of Obed Avodas Kachavim. These cases, Ein Matzil Nosam Benafshon. These cases, you can't kill the Rodef. What's the difference? What's the contrast between the first half of the Mishnah and the second half of the Mishnah? And it seems rather obvious that the difference is that in the first half of the Mishnah, there's a very, very significant victim that we're trying to save, and it's so important to save this victim that a person from murder or from rape, that we can kill the Rodef. In the second half of the Mishnah, even though the Averos in the second half of the Mishnah are very heinous, Avodah Zarah, Shabbos, these are some of the most severe Averos in the Torah, nevertheless, there's no victim, there's no human victim at all, and that's why we can't kill a person to prevent these crimes. So actually, it seems from the Mishnah that the person we're trying to save is the victim. And it seems that would be common sense, that the person we're trying to save is the victim, not the Rodef, save him from Olam Haba by preventing him from doing a crime. However, if you think about it, it's not so simple, because that might be true from the perspective of the Nirdaf. The person being pursued is going to want to kill the Rodef for self-defense, to save his own life. But if we could step back for a second and recognize that we're not talking only about the rights of the victim, of the Nirdaf, we're also talking about the third party, the innocent bystander. Elohein shematzilin osam benafshon. Anyone can kill this Rodef to protect the Nirdaf. And if you think about the perspective of the third party is essentially witnessing an attempted murder, let's say. A trying to kill B. So the bystander C is allowed to kill A to save B. Now, from the perspective of C, the third party, it's really the math of the equation is that the way C sees it, presuming that the only way to protect B is to kill A, C's perspective is basically that one person is going to die. Either B is going to die because A is going to murder B, or A is going to die because C is going to kill A to save B. So essentially what you have here is a choice of whose life we should save and whose life we should not save. Should we kill A or let A kill B? And from that perspective, it seems like it's a tie game, one up. Whose life should be more valuable, A or B? And the answer is that we kill A. And the reason is, you can frame it in different ways, but essentially the reason is because A is bad. Because A is trying to commit murder. And B is completely innocent. So in other words, the thing that gives us a right to kill A is the sin, is the crime that he's going to commit. So, and B is not committing any crime, B is not doing anything wrong. So since A is in the wrong, we kill A to save B. In other words, the thing that tips the scale is not the life of B. The life of B is what balances the scale and makes them equal. The thing that tips the scale in favor of B over A is the fact that A is doing an Avera. So actually, we can see it as a combination of both factors. That we're trying to save B, but the reason why we want to save B over A is because A is doing a sin. So perhaps they're both right. We're trying to save both. We're trying to save the Nirdaf, and it's because we're also trying to save the Rodef from sinning. And possibly the ambiguity here is really which one to focus more on. What's the real thrust of the Mishnah? What are the words Matzil Nosam Menafshon mean? Because we want to know what's the primary factor and what difference does it make. So there are some differences that Mefarshim bring out. And here we have the Ran. This is the Ran that we saw in the first year. Over here, what we have is a footnote to the Ran. Of course, in the actual book, the footnote is in a smaller font than the actual Ran, but it made it larger here for the slide. And in the footnote, they quote later commentaries, Achronim, who discuss the points here and raise a couple of applications of differences of nafkaminas that are actually somewhat interesting. The first is a quote from the Achiezer, and the Achiezer raises the issue of a child who's a rodef. Katan ube ubar, that if a child is a rodef, or a fetus even, in some cases could be considered to be a rodef, what would you say there? Do you still kill the rodef to save the nirdaf when the rodef is a child, a minor, below 13, maybe below 5, maybe below 2, a child holding a gun? Do we say self-defense, you can kill the child to save your life? Or do you say that the child is not sinning? He's not doing anything wrong. He has no awareness of what he's doing. And the extreme case is a fetus whose situation is threatening the life of his mother, let's say. So do you kill the fetus to save the mother? That's a broad question. But specifically, could we apply the rule of rodef to the fetus? Or do we say that how could an ubar be a rodef? He's not doing an avera. To the extent that you focus on avera, that the reason why you can kill a rodef is because he's sinning. So to that extent, we would have to exclude people who aren't sinning or aren't aware of any sin that they're doing. But to the extent that you focus on self-defense, on the life of B, so it doesn't really matter what age the rodef is or what his awareness of sin is, as long as we're trying to protect the life of B. And secondly, in the Sefer Afikayam, there's a very interesting point made that the points of the Afikayam are somewhat complex, but the main idea is that he brings up an issue which is actually discussed in the Gemarah on the previous daf, on daf Ayin Bet in Sanhedrin, of Hatra. Is there a need to warn a rodef before you kill the rodef? And in general, whenever you kill someone in Beit Din, you'd have to warn the person before to make sure that they know, they have awareness that they're doing a sin. But in the case of a rodef, is there a need for hatra? Is there a need for warning? And the Gemara has a bit of a debate about it. And to the extent that you compare it to other misos based in, One view is that it's kechol chayave misos to alma. Whenever you kill someone for a sin, you always have to make sure they're warned so they're aware of their sin, the sin that they're doing. So the same thing might apply to a rodef. If that's the case, then you're looking at it as a punishment, not as a form of self-defense. But if you say, like the other view that the Gemara raises, that there's no need for hasra, there's no need for warning, then to that extent, what you're saying is that the rodef is not a punishment. It's not a form of misas bestin. What rodef is protecting the victim's life, and we don't really care whether the rodef is sinning or is aware of his sin or is the age of a gadol, as long as he's trying to protect the nirdaf. Clearly, I think it's safe to say that there are to some extent both true, and the question is, what's the emphasis and what differences does that make in terms of different nafkaminas, in terms of different halachic applications.